Welcome. As we arrive today, I invite everyone to set aside distraction. Make sure that your cell phone is turned off on airplane mode. And just begin to turn your attention within. While we're waiting for the group to join, it might be nice to just look within and connect with your intention for being here today. And it might be as simple as presence, deepening practice. And it might be something else. Anyone who would enjoy writing in the chat box the intention, just a word or phrase, you're welcome to. Hi, Cindy. I see you in the chat box. And simply be aware of the experience of inviting your attention within. Beginning to breathe deeply and consciously. For some of you, it's morning. For some of you, it's later in the day. So noticing what it's like to begin to slow down. Thinking of meditation as a practice of giving yourself the gift of attention. Attention being the most subtle form of love. And as we learn to give ourselves the gift of attention, moment by moment, whether it's an expansive moment or whether there's contraction, we're learning how to pay attention, how to show up with love, we might say, in every circumstance and every relationship. So in just a moment, we'll move into our meditation, and then we'll open the field for group discussion, for questions, exploring more deeply how the teachings of Dharma apply to this moment in time, how the teachings of Dharma are here to help us to remember the already awakened state, to remember who we really are beyond habit pattern, beyond the cognitive mind, beyond the case of mistaken identity that so many humans get caught in, okay? So take a moment to notice what physical posture feels kind today. I'd like for everyone to gently lean forward, just noticing how it feels to lean forward physically and energetically. And then to gently lean back, just noticing how that feels. And to invite your body to find its physical expression of center, neither leaning forward nor back. Acknowledging that we spend a lot of time either energetically leaning forward, resisting the moment, hurrying, thinking about something else, trying to get somewhere, pushing. or leaning back. I don't really have to show up wholeheartedly for this moment of being alive. Maybe there's fear. I'm going to just procrastinate. I'm going to wait. This is a practice of learning how to meet life from center, neither leaning forward or back. This is it. There is no waiting, and there is no need to push. So that said, eyes resting closed or gently open in a soft gaze. You might imagine an invisible string coming out from the top center of your head, lifting you ever so slightly towards the ceiling. See if you can invite your body to settle just a little more fully. Relaxing any surface muscles where you notice some holding or tension. And bringing all of your attention in this moment to your breath. Noticing where you feel the breath moving through your body most easily and resting your attention there. No particular way to breathe, just allowing the breath to breathe you. So that's an invitation to relax effort a bit. And anytime we notice our attention getting pulled off with the narrative in our head, pulled off by familiar distraction or story, just notice what pulls you in gently and wholeheartedly. Bring your attention back to this fresh moment. Back to the breath, beginning again. So as we begin to settle into meditation, we allow our thoughts to be like clouds moving through the sky. No need to push them away, but no need to wander off with them. It's possible to rest here in peaceful presence, being with life exactly as it is, moment by moment. Consciously allowing life to move through you. The greatest act of nonviolence, consciously allowing, practicing a radical acceptance of nature as it is, moment by moment, and nature includes you. So as we rest in the rise and fall of breath, we allow our awareness to expand organically, so that we can be with the entirety of life in this moment. Less of a doing, more of a surrender. And so, contrary to the agenda of the conditioned mind, which lives in adversarial relationship to life, always assessing, judging, comparing, suggesting that there's something to improve, something that needs to be different, something to get away from. This is a practice of surrendering to being with life as it is, moment by moment. And I would suggest that this is a form, an expression of meeting life with love, moment by moment. Conscious allowing. Resting in the relief that there is nothing you need to do, nothing you need to solve or fix or change, nothing you need to strive for. What if instead you could allow yourself to be held by presence? Every single part of your being, where you are smooth and where you feel cracked. And allow presence to be your simple guide. So gently noticing where your attention is right now. And if you've wandered off, kindly bringing yourself back here. Permission to rest here. Cultivating and deepening a meditation practice is a continual invitation to be yourself fully. Permission to be yourself fully. Suzuki Roshi used to say, express yourself fully. And what he meant was that when we drop into complete non-doing, when we practice this radical acceptance of what is, moment by moment, relaxing into the innate non-separation the innate receptivity that we have with all of life, we are expressing ourselves fully, expressing Buddha nature, who we really are underneath. So as an alternative to some of the ways we can get caught in ego expression, trying hard to express ourselves fully, we can surrender to presence, where there's a getting out of the way and allowing life to move through us completely, through the wellspring of stillness, allowing our Buddha nature, our authentic self, to express fully. And this teaching goes for while we are on or off the cushion. No separation between formal sitting meditation and the informal meditation of everyday life. So I invite you gently to relax just a little more deeply. Softening effort. And please begin now to deepen your breath. Just feeling the air as it enters your body, fills your body, and leaves your body. Let's together now turn our attention to gratitude. So appreciating yourself for your practice. Appreciating this field, connecting with people from all over in the name of consciousness, waking up together, remembering the already awakened state. And just letting yourself touch personally for a moment on whatever it is that you feel the most gratitude for in this moment of life. You know, so much of the mirror of collective loss and change has strengthened and affirmed many people's gratitude for that which we do not take for granted in life. Okay? So just notice how gratitude feels in your body. So gently opening your eyes, and whether you'd like to shift your position or remain as you are, we can all rest in this place of meditation in another form now as we open the field for questions, for inquiry. And as those of you who know me well know, this is a place that I find particular joy in, particular satisfaction in, as we learn so much from one another's questions. And as it can take courage and vulnerability at times, even just to ask a question. And so all questions are welcome. We invite people to write your questions into the chat box, okay? And so you can simply begin reflecting inside what would support you today. What curiosities have arisen as you've been in your own home, deepening your own practice? What would help you to feel more inspired and awake at the opportunity, and I'm going to suggest the simplicity of letting practice guide you in what I pointed to in meditation as expressing yourself fully. It's such a counterintuitive, in our culture, way of thinking about expression, but it's that when we get out of the way, when we surrender in quite a radical way through absolute acceptance of what is arising on the most subtle level, moment by moment, and we rest in this surrendered place, that life can illuminate us even more fully and powerfully than any expression that could ever come through our efforting separate self, through our conditioned sense of who we are in this world, of what's important in this world. It's dropping into surrender, emptiness, and allowing life to inform us. To me, when I first came to Zen, and I meditated starting in college, Vipassana initially. There are so many wonderful practices, and I loved Vipassana, but it was a coming home when I came to Zen, and it was this sense of coming upon the most pure spring of water and drinking from the spring, bathing in the spring, dropping into this place where in the empty space of simple presence, radical acceptance, nothing to do and nothing to push away, I felt the expression of true nature had space finally. And that's all I had actually been craving, the space to allow that power of my deeper self, which we share, all of us, to come through completely, okay? And it just keeps getting deeper with practice. Practice is such a joy. Sometimes when people first arrive, it's like, oh, this is hard work. How am I going to do this? Or, oh, this is all about self-improvement. I got to fix my non-mindful self, or practice in order to get rid of this part of me that doesn't seem whole. And over time, as you continue, you get to drop those confused motivations entirely. So Sarah, would you be willing to read our questions today to start us off? Yeah, thank you.
So the first question is, how does one express one's needs without being needy or demanding or imposing on another?
How does one express one's needs without being needy or demanding or imposing on another? My first encouragement is for you to look at your relationship to your needs. Is there a part of you that is labeling your needs needy, demanding, imposing on another? In my experience, if I've had something going on like that around my needs, then I've had to kind of find this way to give voice to them. That's been messy because I'm assuming it's needy, demanding, an imposition. To learn to welcome your needs. We learn to welcome every single aspect of our being in practice, and to also, which naturally happens in practice, allow to begin to dissolve this bizarre trance of self versus other, I versus you, my needs versus your needs, that we can only allow to dissolve as we begin to graduate, to lose interest in the conditioned mind. It upholds that lens, that delusion. And so to get very practical, and I'll offer some teachings from my book on relational mindfulness, this is a good place to practice compassion and to practice transparency. So if there's a need you have to voice, but you're concerned it's going to be an imposition, you can simply say that. There's a need I have to express, and a part of me is concerned that this is going to seem like an imposition, and I really need to voice it. So with courage, I'm going to share. But the biggest place of the work for you, I suspect, is looking at what you are projecting onto your own needs. We learn how to express all kinds of things that from the conditioned mind we think are uncomfortable, like we think being in a conflict with someone has to be super uncomfortable and ugly. It doesn't, by the way. We think that having needs has to be like an imposition, or that there's a ongoing battle between our needs and others. We think that offering feedback to someone, I really need to point this out to someone, has to be a problem, like mean, or receiving feedback has to be humiliating. None of that is true when we are fully present and when we're welcoming our whole self. None of that is true. So if you want, you can ask a further question if you need more clarification. Also, read Relational Mindfulness. Thank you for that. Sarah, the next question.
Yes, and just so you know, we have 5 questions in queue.
Okay.
When we notice we are falling asleep, literally and figuratively, how do we shift to waking up?
Yeah, good. So literally falling asleep, fatigue, and we all have those nights that we simply didn't get good sleep. And I had a day a few days ago where I was unusually exhausted all day long. So my encouragement is, number one, to not pit that as separate from the meditative state that you're trying to attain, separate from wakefulness. Wakefulness is curiosity. It's living in curiosity and openness. And as I mentioned, this kind of radical acceptance of what is arising in the moment. So there you are, let's say in meditation, practicing, and you're really, really tired and you're starting to fall asleep. Can you just bring a little bit of gentle curiosity to the experience of exhaustion? How do you know that you're exhausted? What are the sensations of falling asleep? Is there any story in your head about it at that moment? Is there a heaviness in your forehead? Can you begin to be subtly curious about it? Curiosity is vibrant aliveness. Curiosity is wakefulness, okay? I would quote from my book about this is that meaning is a distortion on perception. Meaning annihilates curiosity. The mind is a meaning-making machine, constantly churning out meaning about everything. And I'm not pointing to some existential reality where there is no deeper meaning. Drop that if that's where your mind is going. I'm talking about in the moment, moment by moment. Vibrant aliveness, or the wakeful state, is one of curiosity rather than meeting life through the constant meanings, all that come from the past, from past experiences that we now impose on this moment. So back to sleepiness. It's not a problem. If you fall asleep in your meditation because you're exhausted, okay, you needed rest. And to become more curious about that which we're thinking is anti our meditative state. Okay. Sarah. What's our next question?
Can you speak to how we can be both present and practice contentment with all that is and also want to change something about ourselves or our lives?
Sure, yeah. So there's a Suzuki Roshi quote that some of you have heard me share. I love you exactly. Actually, there's two versions. The first one I'm going to share is, you are perfect exactly the way you are, and you can use a little improvement. You are perfect exactly the way you are, and you can use a little improvement. And I want to start with that statement. We really are asked in practice to drop into acceptance, to drop into radical acceptance, because this mind of conditioning, the mind of separation, is so tenacious. It is so focused on something wrong, something I gotta do, something I gotta fix, solve, change. And we could spend, and some people do, folks, the rest of life listening to this and acting on everything that it dictates and trying to fix and solve everything that it points out. That's a life of suffering. If you haven't noticed, that's a life of suffering. And it actually, in my experience, when I was following that mindset, it never helped me really grow in the ways that I needed to grow, or change things that actually, from love of this being, I did want more guidance on. So it's not about coming from the fixing or solving place. It's coming from acceptance. And then from acceptance, yeah, we can see ways that ourselves, that this person, or sometimes that someone else we love, could use some growth, could use some guidance, could use some deepening in a particular direction, but that it comes from love. And this is tricky because I grew up in a culture that is so addicted to self-improvement, and I consider self-improvement a disease, and I'm happy to speak more to that if you like, but it's a place of great suffering. Okay, so we have to drop into the place of actually knowing what acceptance is. Moment by moment is the most healing force in the world. It's about seeing clearly. Practice and acceptance. It's about learning to see clearly, rather than seeing through this diluted lens, the mind of separation, that pretty much does see fault in everything. And so part of having a practice is dropping into this surrendered, peaceful, consciously allowing place. And then from that place, we get to see. It's like, I'll use the metaphor of a windshield. The windshield gets cleaned completely, clear seeing. And then we get to see when things arise in our mind, certain thoughts arise, drops on that windshield that are not authentic, okay, that are not helpful. And then we can do the work of continuing to let go of that. So I'll also add this, you know, when we drop into, as I talked about in meditation, this surrender, this place of full presence, then there's room for our essence to fully express itself, to fully express itself. There's a part of you who is craving that. When you instead get caught in self-improvement, I need to fix this imperfect self, there's a part of us who knows the potential of true nature and wants to express that. The way of sustainable long-term change in our life and really is nourishing that, rather than staying on the surface up here and trying to fix and change. It's about dropping to a much deeper place and then allowing true nature to emerge. It's a powerful force, okay? Thank you for that. Let's all take in a deep breath. Really just noticing the quality with which you're paying attention, the quality with which you're listening. And Sarah?
Next question is, how can people who are touch deprived right now support themselves when they are craving touch and building up tension in their body as they simultaneously fear and contract from other people?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I had a number of conversations with people recently, one-on-one with different practitioners and people who were really feeling touch deprived. So first, just to have a moment of acknowledging, you know, there's some of us who are cozied up with our partners right now, and there are some people who are going through this solo, and to really have a lot of compassion for the experience of how lonely that can feel. And I'll also point out that if we don't have a really conscious relationship, then even a partnership can feel lonely, okay? So it's not about circumstance. There's a few things I want to say about this, and I have a unique experience because I lived for 7 years as a Buddhist monk at a silent monastery where I did not experience touch. That was not part of our practice. I was celibate for that period for 8 years, so I took I would say I took a break from partnered sexuality, but my erotic intelligence, eros, was with me every single day because that's part of presence and part of vibrant aliveness. I didn't have the kind of nurturing touch that people have with friendships and whatnot during that time. And then, of course, at the end of that time, I ended up moving back out into the world. I'm now married to my beloved and have a lot of loving touch in all of my friendships. But that said, be careful of the story that says, I need something that I'm not having right now and can't have right now, and without it there's a big hole. And be open to what it is that you receive through touch. Okay, certainly dopamine, right? But what it is on an energetic level that you receive through touch. We receive reassurance, we receive soothing, we receive sensuality, we receive joy. And what are other ways that during this time you can access that? Number one, this question for everyone, how kind can you be to your body during this time? Through subtle awareness, and I learned this as a monastic, through subtle awareness of the body, you can experience all kinds of states, all kinds of expanded consciousness of levels of joy, and again, sensuality that are not so popular in our culture. So how attuned to your physical body can you be during this time? How loving can you be with yourself? Can you every day, and there's scientific studies about the power of just resting a hand on heart, actually, and what it does to chemicals in your body. Can you close your eyes and practice gentle touch, tender touch to your own self? I'm not talking so much necessarily about sexual touch. I'm just saying tender touch, listening to your body. giving yourself words of compassion. Some of you work with me long term, and you know that there's a daily practice that we do of cultivating self-compassion and expressing it through both touch and voice. Our bodies respond to both. So I'd like you to open your mind a little bit to other possibilities during this time, and choose that rather than be caught in a story that says there's something I can only get in a certain way and I don't have access to it now, so I'm stuck. Okay? Just see about that. And who else, Sarah?
How do we support ourselves from feeling stuck in depression?
How do we support ourselves from feeling stuck in depression? So this is a big question, and whoever wrote this, you might want to consider emailing me and seeing about setting up a one-on-one session, a time that we would connect together simply on the phone, and that I would guide you through practices to work with this. The first question I want to ask is, what are you depressing? What are you depressing? So when we find ourselves in depression, something is being depressed. And the second thing is, how easy is it, this is for all of us, to start getting caught in a cycle like depression arises and then we start feeding it somehow or getting caught in it. We can do that by, like depression really impacts our energetic body. So we can start slowing down, we can start eating more, we can start listening to these repetitive thoughts. What can you do to begin to wake up your energetic body, to expand it? So exercise is a really kind support when there's starting to be depression. Engaging more when you notice yourself resigning to the depression. So what I mean by that is acceptance and resignation are two really different things. At some point we can talk about that. But I know when I'm remembering a period, the first time I ever really had depression in life, I was in college, and I'd moved back east from California, and it was freezing. And I think it was just an experience of what's called SAD, like the lack of sun. And I remember waking up in a state that I just was not used to. And I think it lasted 2 whole months over that winter. And I could see sometimes, because I had already begun practicing, how I would start to collude with that by just kind of resigning to it, identifying with it. So the name of the game in practice very much is, am I getting identified with separate self? So with the part of me who's depressed, the part of me who's angry, the part of me who's sad, or am I learning to really stay present as much as I can and be with this depressed part of me? Like I'd be with a friend, be with this angry part of me, okay? So you might want to reach out, but those are a few encouragements. And equally, I would just add, we don't need to resist that depression is here. Bring curiosity, like I asked someone to bring curiosity to exhaustion, to sleepiness, to depression. How do you know you're depressed? What are the most subtle signs in body, mind, feelings of the experience of depression? Okay, curiosity helps to bring us back to wakefulness. All right, thank you for that.
The next question is, can you speak again on, quote, let your mindfulness be your activism? I find myself wanting to do something so people on this beautiful planet don't go back to old destructive patterns when the current extraordinary situation starts normalizing again. I understand that I start with myself, and somehow that doesn't feel enough.
Okay, hi Summer, nice to see you. There's a couple things that I would say about this. The first is, it's not what we do, it's how we do it. And so for me, even as a young person immersed in a culture of activism, I could see, oh wow, these are some amazing projects happening in the world, some amazing efforts people in my circle and family were engaged in. And yet the way people were going about it didn't feel revolutionary to me, meaning it felt like a lot of me versus you, burnout, depletion, stress, drama, things like that. So that's part of what drew me to the path of Zen and a path of engaged practice where we're literally connecting. It's not a cognitive understanding. It happens in the heart, that our every action, our every thought, that our practice is an expression of activism itself. And that means that we really understand that we're practicing on behalf of the collective. We're letting that reminder snap us out of suffering and snap us out of, or wake us up, maybe is a better way to put it, from old collective conditioning. So on behalf of this being and the collective, but we're not stopping there. We're not saying, so it's just going to be my internal practice. We're living in a state of the inquiry for love of life, because subtle awareness, presence puts us even more thoroughly in touch with our love of life as a motivator for everything. So for love of life, how can I be of service in this moment? How can I be of service in this moment? And there are so many ways that can express itself. It can express itself simply through, as I noted in meditation, completely surrendering to full presence right now and just letting my presence itself, letting true nature be what all of this being's energy is going to, rather than ego, because each and every one of us knows egocentric karmic conditioning is a pretty violent force in the world, a pretty messy force in the world. So cleaning up our own act around this is important. It's vital. But we're not creating a duality where it's like only inner activism instead of reaching out, rolling up my sleeves and helping out where I can. You're asking yourself in your heart, what is the way I want to be of service that feels true for me externally? And can I be matching up, creating connection between the how I do what I'm doing? Am I showing up for this work with a peaceful way of being? Okay, with relational mindfulness, relational intelligence? Or am I in the name of saving the world, okay, which is paradigm I used to be aware of, completely abandoning this person and hating this person, okay? So the point is to know that expressing yourself fully by reawakening to who you really are is of service to the entire collective. And it also gives you a wellspring of energy to roll up your sleeves and say, hey, how can I make a difference out there? I want to pause and acknowledge Sarah, who first did a retreat with me over New Year's at Esalen, is organizing these bi-weekly meditations during this time of the virus, and asking herself, how can I be of service because I have a little extra time? Began a nonprofit that helps small businesses to be connected with resources they need during this time. I hope I'm saying that right. And also began a nonprofit that helps people who are in the hospital and dying receive iPads so that they can connect with their families visually before they pass. Two simple, incredible contributions that came from her heart. And I get to hear examples of this stuff all the time because I am connected with many people through Dharma practice. So, you know, one more thing I'll say about Summer's question, and it's just that things need to change. Things need to change. There, so much is being illuminated in what's going on right now, the insane inequities in our world, the fact that our country is not able to respond with the economic support, the social services, there's so much that needs to change. It does all come down to healing the myth of separation. But can we, while we're going through this time and taking care of our own self and also our own process of awakening, okay, we be aware of new possibilities beyond the mind of pessimism, beyond the limiting delusion that my actions don't matter, beyond all of that, folks, you are needed now. Your presence is needed. If we're going to make it as a species, your full presence is needed. And when we drop into presence, we receive guidance and information from a place beyond the cognitive mind. So stop believing it as the ultimate authority. Stop trying to figure things out here. It doesn't work. And get present. That's my encouragement. I want to be aware of our time and that we still have a couple of questions, I believe. So
I think actually we just have one more, unless I missed in the
great.
Yep.
Great.
Yep, just one more. Oh wait, no, a second one just came in.
Perfect. And I just want to note that I see one maybe in the chat box, but you can see if that's been taken care of. Okay, Lauren and then Stephanie. Yes.
So as the world is learning acceptance of this new normal, I'm having a hard time accepting the change, mostly because I've had a routine I've been used to for the last 13 years, especially in my work life. Now I'm learning to accept that everything about this routine has to change, and I feel like I'm free falling. I know that there is a gift here. Can you talk about how to be open-minded to these new gifts?
Yes, absolutely. One of my teachers used to say, when you are falling, dive. When you are falling, dive. And she was pointing to kind of the counterintuitive invitation in practice. So often we actually feel like we're falling because we're letting go of standing on this familiar shore of identity where it's like, I know who I am. This is how I go about life every day. These are the thoughts in which, even if they cause me great suffering, I find my identity. I find a set sense of self, even if it sucks and it's painful. So we let go of the familiar shore in practice, and we begin to meet life with more openness, curiosity, questioning. Is what I'm believing here really true? Okay. What is beyond my mind and my sense of myself as just body, mind, feelings? What is beyond? And it can feel like drifting out into the ocean without yet seeing the next shore. So for a part of us that we have to take great care of, this can really feel like swimming through absolute uncertainty, absolute unknown. Anyone who's had just the rug pulled out from under you completely in life through loss, huge life transition, knows this. There's a period of grief. But in practice, there's an intentional experience of letting go of that, letting go, so that we can learn to walk step by step, breath by breath, navigating the unknown, navigating what feels dark rather than light and familiar. Dark as in the mystery, the unknown, empty space, in order to access something far greater than our typical identity and mode of perception. So the spiritual invitation is huge. And because we have a short period of time, I just want to say, on a practical level for you, Lauren, I would encourage you to, number one, really honor the part of you who's just feeling disoriented, and some people have expressed feeling disappointed and just feeling frustrated. To just really honor that part of you, to take some time to get to know that part of you, to befriend that part of you, to ask, what is the need not being met? And how would a compassionate mentor, a loving friend, not trying to cheer that part up, but for me it would be something like letting that part of me know again and again and again, hey, I've got your back. I know this is uncomfortable, but I will be right with you every step of the way. You're going to be okay. Like that kind of mentoring, while at the same time being willing to ask, what is the larger opportunity of this time? If I really let myself be open and practice openness to it, what might reveal itself? Okay. There's one more question, I believe, from Stephanie. Is that so?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm struggling as an African American woman of feeling powerless and impacted to what is happening in my community. How do I manage this overwhelming feeling?
Okay, these are all great questions. And I want to say a couple things about this. Number one, yes, the illumination of inequity in our world right now is horrendous. As we're dealing with this situation, as we deal with climate change in the future, it is communities of color, it is the indigenous people, it is impoverished people who are impacted the most and the most harshly and the most discompassionately by the system. It's outrageous. It's insane. I have a loved one, someone I care about deeply, who's an African American man who had been in prison through the three strikes rule, which means he did nothing for many years, and he recently ended up in the hospital, and because of his situation received some pretty inequitable treatment, is the way I'll put it. In my heart, I feel rage about this topic that you are presencing for us, Stephanie, every single day. And I know I'm not alone in this group. It's overwhelming. It's heartbreaking. So here's the deal. Part of what we're doing in practice and through dropping into presence is allowing our hearts to be open, allowing ourselves to be part of the natural feedback system of planet Earth. And that means, how does it feel in our hearts to acknowledge the mistreatment, the inequity, the hierarchical perception, the violence of it, systemic racism, to feel it in our hearts, to presence it, to let it batter and perturb and wake us up, because in that being battered and perturbed by it, we can say, number one, from the deepest place in me, I am willing to be part of the change, and so I'm going to let this feeling inform me of what that means, inform me in how to let go. And this is not easy for human beings, but it's the next stage in evolution. It's where we need to go. How do each of us, and this happens through practice, begin to release the hierarchical perception that comes from generations upon generations upon generations of systemic racism, patriarchy. It's not innate to nature. It's hierarchical perception. So it has to be released both in here, and then also, Stephanie, like we were talking with Summer about, are there any ways I can be of service externally right now? Any ways I can roll up my sleeves and be of service specifically? And I'll name a couple important things before we bring it to a close. Number one, a colleague of mine recently started an organization, and I don't have the link today. I'll try to send it out on one of our follow-ups, for a way that people who want to direct some donations, some funding, specifically to families in need, communities in need, can do so, so that there are people on the inside, both in indigenous communities, in downtown LA Skid Row, and a bunch of other strategic places, where it can go directly to families in need. That's one thing I want to name. And I'll see if I can share some other resources, but there are plenty of ways you can be in help, plenty of ways that those of us who are more privileged and therefore have a little bit more power given by the system can use that on behalf of the whole, okay? So I want to pause, and I want to say how much I enjoy connecting in this way, and that I'm really grateful for you giving time to this. I want to acknowledge that if anyone still wants to sign up for the Deep Time month-long course, you can do so today. Tomorrow is pretty much the last day, and our first interactive session is Sunday. for those who feel willing through the spirit of generosity to offer a donation for my time in teaching, I would receive it in huge gratitude. So you could make a nonprofit, a tax-deductible donation to my nonprofit. And the link is on the follow-up or on my website under donations. And this really helps me during a time when I've had to cancel 6 retreats, when I'm, like all of us, in such a unexpected moment in time. And lastly, for those of you who are in couples, sign up for our 3-week, meeting twice a week, couples experience about love, relationship, awakening. Okay? Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Sarah.